Saab's latest 9.5 aims to propel the Swedish brand back into the executive car mainstream. It's bigger than its immediate rivals and boasts smooth, potent turbo engines, a wide range of suspension options, an excellent XWD 4x4 system, and some desirable high-tech features. Overall, an interesting and highly individual alternative to the usual executive contenders. It's hard to think of a car more important to its brand than this one. Saab's second generation 9.5 must be a sales success, that's a given. But just as importantly, it must restore to its Swedish maker that individuality that once characterised this unique marque. A tough task, you might think, given this car's development under previous Saab owners General Motors, the very people accused of watering down the brand it must rescue. But not an impossible one. Up to 70% of this car's parts are, after all, uniquely Swedish, making this the most purely conceived Saab since the 9000 model that I used to own was launched back in 1985. This car really couldn't have arrived at a better time. Since January 2010, the company has been back in independent ownership, the way Saab should be, having been purchased by Dutch sports car maker Spyker for a very affordable $74 million, or as new owner Victor Muller put it, less than the price of a new wind tunnel. Now, that's not bad, considering that the Swedish Trollhättan factory has been redeveloped, an unaffected and enthusiastic dealer network remains in place, and there's still a technology share agreement with General Motors. Plus, there's plenty left in Spyker's reserves for new model development that begins with this car, a car offering luxury saloon space and values at much more affordable executive saloon prices. It's a very different car from a very different company for management buyers prepared to take a very different approach. At its heart, Saabishness should always be technology driven with its own individual twist. Now, exactly how individual this 9.5 really is something we're going to explore over the next few minutes, but the technology is certainly in place. You can specify your 9.5 with either of two 6-speed transmissions. There's a choice of 2 hydraulic steering systems. You can opt between 3 different suspension setups with a sport chassis setting depending on model, and choose between either 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive with or without an electronic diff. Now, if you think all that sounds complicated as a buyer, just imagine what it's like to deal with on the production line. And that's before you start thinking about engines. In true Saab style, the range is built around turbocharged power, which in petrol form means a 180 PS 1.6 or a 220 PS 2-litre unit, capable of rest to 60 in 7.9 seconds, only a second slower than the 300 PS 2.8-litre V6 petrol flagship that I'm driving here, which also tops out at around the 150 mile an hour mark. As for diesels, well, most buyers will possibly be considering the entry-level 160 PS single-turbo 2-litre diesel, but more probably will want to look at the 190 PS twin-turbo TTID unit, not least because its extra torque, there's 400 Newton meters as opposed to 350 Newton meters in the smaller diesel, comes in pretty useful when you're trying to lug along 1.7 tons of Nordic automotive real estate. More interesting is the 9.5's method for making the most of its power. If you choose an entry-level petrol or diesel variant, your car will come front-driven. If you opt instead for the 2.8-litre V6 petrol turbo flagship that I'm driving here, it'll come fitted with Saab's acclaimed XWD all-wheel drive system. Go, though, as probably most buyers will, for one of the models in between, and you can specify your car with either layout. Now, choosing your 9.5 with 4x4 fitted as part of the package gives you not only the extra grip, but also a far more advanced suspension system of the kind that I'm driving here, and it really should be standard across the range. At the front, Saab has fitted what it calls hyper struts there to reduce torque steer. That's that writhing feeling you get through the steering wheel of cruder performance cars under harsh acceleration. While at the back there's an equally sophisticated multi-link suspension setup that delivers a supple yet compliant ride. It's all enough to make this car a tremendously sure-footed thing. The electronic stability systems are especially good, as perhaps you'd expect, given that Saab invented the double swerve elk test after their group managing director was killed by one. It's the kind of executive saloon you'd kill for at the end of a long week with the night rain pouring down and 250 miles to drive. But in standard two-wheel drive form, it's not the kind of car that can emphatically take the fight to its more sporting German rivals. Get an XWD model though, with a clever electronic ELSD rear limited slip differential, apportioning up to 50% of power between front and rear wheels to catapult you in and out of corners, and things begin to change. You'll be even better placed if you've specified Saab's clever DriveSense active damping system, which via comfort, sport or intelligence settings enables you to not only sharpen or soften the ride, but alter steering response, throttle response, and even tweak the way that torque is apportioned between front and rear axles. If a Saab becomes nothing more than a slightly different take on a rival BMW, Audi or Mercedes, it can never succeed. It must be more than that, and this 9.5 is. The style is like nothing else. The look, futuristic and clean, and almost everyone you meet will have an opinion on it. Perhaps most striking is the way that the A and B pillars have been blacked out to create a wraparound effect for the glass house in the style of an aircraft cockpit. That and the way that the roofline gently tapers down at the rear, suggesting a hatchback in what is actually a four-door saloon. The rear view works especially well, the gentle curves of the bodywork meeting in sharper creases along the boot lid and the bumper. An unbroken strip of chrome runs along the boot, connecting the light clusters and visually widening the car. And it's big. The shape disguises that, so I better give you some idea of what I mean. At over 5 meters long, this car is a full 15 centimeters longer than a Mercedes E-Class. That's nearly enough to take it out of the E-Class and BMW 5 Series dominated executive sector altogether and put it into Mercedes S-Class luxury saloon territory. You won't be surprised to learn then that rear seat space is simply enormous. You've to negotiate your way there a little. The roof slopes down quite a way before the door opening starts, so you've to stoop very slightly on entry and exit. But once here, there really is proper room for 3 fully sized adults to sit alongside one another. No other sub £50,000 car offers more passenger space than this. And not many can match this saloon's 515 litre boot, which you can extend by split folding the rear seats or using a ski hatch, and which also features carrying hooks, tie-down eyes and an umbrella holder. At the wheel, despite a proliferation of Vauxhall source switches and dials and rather too much black plastic, the feel still manages to be distinctly Swedish. No pretentious wood and plenty of carefully designed design touches specific to the brand. The starter button down here on the transmission tunnel, for example, the joystick controlled air vents with their multi-layer grids, the night panel which darkens all but the most crucial instruments to keep your attention focused at night. You can even configure the screen in the centre of the instrument cluster here to be that of a rolling barrel speedo, a bit like an aircraft altimeter. And that, along with the optional heads-up display that I've got here that projects MPH and other crucial information onto the inside of the windscreen just ahead of you, means that there are actually 3 different speed gauges in this car, which ought to be enough for anyone. 9.5 pricing pitches this car directly against its German rivals, with figures starting from just under £30,000 and ranging up to just under £40,000. Now, Saab are particularly targeting this saloon at Audi A6 buyers, and to give you a specific comparison, the entry-level diesel that many will buy is priced to within a few £100 of its Audi rival, yet offers a better spec and all that extra space. Comparable BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class models require premiums of around £1,500 and £2,500 respectively. Most 9.5 buyers will no doubt be agonising between 160 and 190 PS 2-litre diesel variants. But if your tax banding can stand it, don't ignore the surprisingly impressive entry-level 180 PS 1.6-litre petrol turbo, or indeed the very smooth and really rather quick 220 PS 2-litre petrol turbo. A car that gets within a second of the 0 to 60 time of the V6 all-wheel drive turbo petrol flagship that I've been driving here, and like the faster diesel is available with a choice of either 2 or 4-wheel drive. Whichever 9.5 model you choose, you should find it to be decently equipped, though it has to be said that the style and technology that really creates the Saabishness of this car is mainly found on the pricier all-wheel drive models. Still, every variant does include 6-way adjustable part leather electrically powered seats, alloy wheels, cruise control, front and rear parking sensors, a decent quality 9-speaker stereo, Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, as well as all the usual provisions you'd expect on an expensive executive car. Safety provision runs to all the usual airbags, a very effective stability control system, and anti-whiplash front head restraints. The 9.5 engine options give a fuel economy spread that goes from 53 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle for the entry-level 2-litre diesel, right down to 24.8 miles to the gallon on the same reading for this petrol 2.8-litre V6 turbo flagship. Fitting the 6-speed automatic to the diesel has quite an impact on fuel consumption. You'll lose about 12 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, but less of an impact if you go for a 2-litre petrol turbo, where it falls just 4 miles to the gallon from 33 to 29 mpg. CO2 returns, well, they vary between 139 and 159 grams per kilometre for the diesels, but they're up at 244 grams per kilometre for this Turbo 6 V6 2.8 petrol model. There isn't too much of a cost of ownership issue if you opt for an X-wheel drive model. It won't affect CO2 or miles to the gallon to any great extent. Depreciation, though, that's a bit of an unknown. It won't be as good as this car's German rivals, but rarity value should help, as will the fact that you can probably negotiate a far more attractive sticker price right up front. There's the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty. It is perhaps ironic that the first really individual, unique Saab produced under General Motors ownership will be one that GM will never profit from. On the other hand, it's also rather fitting that a new era in which the brand will depend on those very qualities for survival begins with this car. It challenges convention, as every Saab should, both in the way that it looks and in its provision of Audi A8 and Mercedes S-Class luxury saloon cabin space at Audi A6 and Mercedes E-Class executive saloon prices. It isn't perfect, but that target will be a lot closer when Saab get around to offering the technical niceties of pricier models right across the range. Overall, success for this car doesn't lie in its outselling its German rivals. That won't happen, and in any case its appeal would be diminished if it did. Instead, this 9.5 will be measured by the way that it re-establishes Saab's brand values, makes it once again an appealing go-your-own-way choice. Good then that this is exactly the kind of car it is. Very stylish, very different, and very Saab.